Hello everyone and welcome to Sims 4. I know some of you were asking me to continue playing this game and make some builds, so here we are. We're going to be making a small home. This is actually modeled after my grandparents' home from my hometown, and this is a place where I spent a lot of time growing up. So it's kind of interesting and a bit of an exercise to try and build something from almost 100% memory, right? Because I don't live there anymore. It's a 5-hour drive just to go and visit them, which I try and do as much as I can here lately. But it's kind of an interesting challenge to do, you know, a little bit of this kind of exercise, you know, build something from memory simply as best that you can and see if it works out. And I think overall you guys are going to be relatively pleased with what we accomplish. It's a somewhat of a small cottage-like structure. It has a relatively high-peaked single main roof with a couple little offshoots here and there. Now this isn't going to be an exact replica, as I said, only due to, I would say, the limitations of the building system in Sims 4. You know, coming from Planet Coaster and then trying to build something in a lot of other creative games where you don't really get to control all that granular detail bit by bit, almost like Legos, and you coming over to The Sims where it's more like using asset pieces in a predefined manner and then working within those limitations. It's a bit challenging, especially since I'm not well practiced in this. You know, a lot of the building games that I've recorded over the past 3 years or so have been games that I've played a lot, and I haven't really played a Sims game like in a really in-depth manner probably since late high school, you know, so that's like 2007, 2008, something like that. And it just feels weird to be kind of thrown back into the limitations of this kind of predefined space. But nonetheless, I think I succeeded and I learned a lot so that we can take this experience into the next one. So that's enough of the little bit of the preface to this episode. We're just gonna be talking about the build going forward. So the house, as I said, is a little bit of a cottage-like theme. It's not like a complete European cottage, I wouldn't say. To me, this is more like the American version of a cottage. You know, it has a lot of those elements to it, but you know, it's a little bit more standardized, I would say. It doesn't have a lot of that charm that a lot of the European cottages, which I love, by the way, have. So those are things that you have to kind of deal with when you are, you know, almost like America's like a big conglomerate of all the cultures, right? And so you know, when we do construct and borrow things from others, it tends to not be 100% accurate, or it might be a more half version or so. But nonetheless, you know, it's a quaint home. It's small. I would say it's a 1.5 story, just simply due to the upper story isn't really a full, you know, it's only going to be a bit 2 rooms and some attic space, which isn't really representational here in The Sims, but nonetheless, that's what we're going to be starting out with. So this here is the kitchen. It's pretty much right what you see when you walk through the main door. They have a little bit of a bar / island dividing the space from the actual dining room, which is back there. And it's also very interesting trying to find the right colors. This is a very old home, you know. My grandparents have been living in it for pretty much their whole lives at this point, you know, at least the majority. You know, I mean, they had this house since my father and aunt and uncle were born, so it's just kind of an interesting look at possibly some older like wallpapers and colors and palettes that just aren't really used anymore, and it's almost hard to find that stuff in newer video games, right? Because that style is just so not used that sometimes there's not a full deck of cards that you're working with. But you know, that's fine. I'm happy to try and make it work as best as possible. Also, what I'm noticing in the dining room is that the dining table never really got used. Most of the time we ate there at the island. But, you know, for Thanksgiving or Christmas, you know, we did use the dining table a bit and the island at the same time. But it's just kind of interesting as you're filling in this space, how little control you have of, one, the item placement, but also scalability to some things, right? That dining table is fairly large, and it does take up a large amount of room back there, but when you're in person, you kind of grew up with that always there, you don't really pay attention to it. But now that I'm trying to make a copy, it kind of becomes hard, you know? You're just like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how small this room is, kind of feeling. But that's just kind of how it goes. Now, there is a basement to this. As you can see, there is a staircase down there. I didn't really finish it on this build simply due to I didn't really have, I guess, a reason to. The basement on this house was generally a simple concrete slab. It had some storage and some tables and their laundry dryer, washing machine, but that's it. So I decided to not really think about that. I wanted to just cover the main floor and the second floor of this build, just because it's a little bit more recognizable and nice looking, in my opinion. It's just what gets used the most often. It's tough to find also some things to fit corners in The Sims, right? Because The Sims uses the grid building system, which, you know, I'm still trying to learn and work with here. But as you can see, I have a hard time, even with move objects on, getting things in the right location. I really wish there was a free rotation tool. In fact, if you guys have any tips and tricks on anything when it comes to The Sims, do let me know in the comments down below, because I feel like this learning curve is going to be a bit of a challenge here initially, but that's fine. Here we are in the living room. Plenty of seating in a nice L shape here. They used to have like one of those really old TVs where like the TV was like embedded into the actual entertainment system, and not separating out, you know. It's that really old kind of 60s style television, which isn't in The Sims. So I'm just kind of trying to find rustic decor and then putting a small television on top of it. We have a desk over here where, you know, the phone would be, and some paperwork to be done for the family and household. And it's just kind of an interesting thing about old homes, and especially if you probably go to like an older relatives of yourselves, is that the living room is just a place to sit and enjoy family. It's not something you really get that much anymore, I don't think. You know, I know in a lot of, you know, my homes nowadays, is like, yeah, you might have a couch or two, but this is like an abundance of seating space. The TV is really small compared to the rest of the space. It's not like the center focus of the area. The focus is simply sitting around and enjoying each other's company, which I thought was pretty interesting in that case there. We got the fireplace. That actually is very close to the actual fireplace, so I was pretty happy to find that kind of white brick painted fireplace there. Put a mirror over it. The urn kind of on the top for my grandfather's ashes, because that's where those are to this day. And it's just shaping together relatively nice, you know. We're not going to be covering the whole build on the speed section here. We're just going to be covering, I guess, the bulk of it. I know they do have like a textured wallpaper, I think with flowers or some other minor detail, but it's not that big. So trying to simplify it, make it more just lines, vertical lines, you know, something wallpaper like, and then you can just call it detailed enough, and that's fine. We are adjusting the roof line, trying to get the roof to work. I'm noticing with The Sims that the roof tool is a little bit of the bane of my existence, and eventually we do get that working so that when we hide the upper floors, you can actually see into them and part of the roof still, which is, to me, very important. Playability is an important factor for that. And there is the staircase going up to the next floor. This is my this is my the bathroom. of that area, and it's very small. There's a single bathroom, you know, bathtub, shower, with a very small, not well optimized toilet. One could say. This is my grandfather's room. Played a lot of Mario Kart with him in this room here. Plenty of memories on this one, sitting in that chair by the bed and either playing Mario Kart, Final Fantasy VII. He beat Final Fantasy, which I thought was funny for like an 80-year-old man to be playing Final Fantasy, but he was pretty important to my family growing up. So at this point, the house is pretty much well laid out. We have kind of porch work going on there. It's a good gathering place, right, to talk, hang out, sit outside. Outside is very important to my grandparents and to our family in that sense. So, you know, spent a lot of time on that porch. A lot of low-lying shrubs and pines going alongside the house. There was a little bit of a fence on one side of the house, and those had some greenery elements going along there, which was, you know, it's kind of interesting just to break up elements here and there with it. And I can't do 100% of their yard simply due to the limit in plot size, but this is pretty much the whole speed build section of this house. Here in a second, we'll be looking at some still photos of just different rooms where I can talk about more specific details. I know this episode's a little short and it feels a little rushed, but I just want to get something out so we can get started building stuff in The Sims, because it's a game that I've always enjoyed playing and texturing the ground at this point, and it's just lovely. So I made my grandfather, so that's him sitting there in his usual seat. And this is the kitchen, looking towards the dining room and the archway of the living room there. You can see the actual front of the house is that door to the right. And this is looking from the dining table back towards the kitchen and etc. So, you know, different little corner cabinets tucked in here and there. Very small pieces of furniture that just make the whole place feel very lived in and very well kept, you know. Plenty of comfy seats going around here in the living room. Plenty of lazy boys. They were a big fan of lazy boys, and you know, took plenty of naps in those. We got the bathroom, again, small but super functional, right? You got your toilet, your bathtub, the sink, which should be centered on the in between those two cabinets there, but sadly clipping wouldn't let me do that. Bit of a hamper for laundry and a mirror, and you're good to go there. This would be my grandmother's room. You know, they have a little bit of a mirror and a dresser against the wall and a bed. Now, there would have been a closet on the right wall there, but Sims doesn't really do closets very well, so I decided to just kind of leave that wall blank for the time being. I might revisit this build on my own time. This is my grandfather's room. Little TV on a stand with the game console. Dresser, clock on top there. Pretty standard stuff. End tables, you know, another table with a lamp. Very simplistic West Virginia style living here, you know, not going overboard. And this is the hallway connected to my grandfather's room that goes upstairs. The bedroom on the left and right were my dad's and my sister's respectively. And this is pretty much where, if I had to stay over, this is the room I would sleep in. You know, got a nice little desk there. We played a lot of chess against my grandfather, so I put a chess set in there, even though he just had one of those small magnetized sets that you would play with, but I figured it would be nice to put that in there. This would be my aunt's room, and never really went in there too much. No real reason to. So it's pretty plain. I think the bed's kind of a little bit more to the right side and probably should be a proper full-size bed rather than this twin, but that's a minor detail that I can always fix a bit later. Here's the finished look on the outside. The good front porch, which is technically the back porch here, but this is the main entrance people came out of there. And the different roof tiles, right? They had slate roof on their main portion, and then asphalt on the porch there. This is the true front of the house. Nice little cottage front. So with that, we're going to call this episode there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.